And today we're talking a little bit about Copilot and what Microsoft Copilot looks like and how AI is supporting our work in education. Love to stay connected with you today and beyond today. You can find me on most all socials at EdTechWells, and I2E is who I work for. If something captures your attention today, if there's something that you're interested in, excited about, would like to learn more about, please tag me, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, X, LinkedIn. You can find me at Nathan Wells. Love to connect with you and learn more about what you're doing, learn more about what was interesting today, because I know we have a short time together. So let's jump right in. Some of you have already been putting in the chat where you're joining us from, but I'd love to have kind of a fun question too. What did you get to do that you enjoyed this summer? For me, moving across the country to a new part of the United States, we went and visited the mountains and we went and visited the beach. They were just quick little trips, almost day trips. One of them was a day trip, but it just helped us get outside and explore a little bit. And that's something we really enjoyed as a family. Love to hear something fun that you've enjoyed this summer. Maybe it's reading a good book. Maybe it's dancing in the rain. I don't know what it is, but love to have you drop that in the chat. It's always good to get to know each other and be able to understand people from different areas. So if you have a chance, love to hear where you're joining us from in the chat and something you've got to do this summer that you've enjoyed. So I love that. I know a lot of us in the US and Northern Hemisphere in general are headed back to school. So love to hear some of those things. So as you're doing that, just going to kind of kick us off a little bit here. First off is we know that this last year has been the year of AI. Last school year specifically for us, we know AI has actually been around for a long time, but AI this year specifically was kind of a big deal. Really came into the radar in schools last fall, where a lot of us started saying like, oh my gosh, okay, kids are using it, us as teachers and those of us supporting teachers are using it. So all of those things really kind of came to the forefront, I feel like, this last school year. And a lot of companies and a lot of things have been kind of thrown at education saying, hey, you should use this, you should use that, and here's why. So, you know, nice. That is kind of where I'm coming from today, is like, okay, we know AI is a big deal. What are we doing with it and how can we be successful with it? One of the reasons I'm really focused on Microsoft Copilot, specifically in this session and just in our work in general, is we do agree with what Microsoft's doing. We agree with the safety, the fairness, a lot of the things that are aimed towards keeping our students and keeping our education system safe when it comes to using AI in general. And so we really have leaned into this and believe that Microsoft is doing a good job with this. Oh, nice. So one of the things that we're gonna look at is this left-hand column here. So the free version, and specifically this top one, just at Microsoft Copilot. I am gonna call out the Microsoft Learning Accelerators and Teams for Education a little bit. And then I'll give a brief little thing about the enhanced experience. And what I mean by that is specifically Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. And that means that Copilot, Microsoft's AI tool, is embedded in the tools you use in Microsoft, meaning Outlook, Word, OneNote, Excel, PowerPoint, Loop, Planner, etc. SharePoint. It's embedded in those. Now, that is an extra cost, so I'm not going to focus on that today because I don't know what you have access to, but I am going to call that out just a little bit for a couple of examples. I'll mostly focus on the free version of Microsoft Copilot that's available to anybody that has a Microsoft Education license or not, actually. You can use it with a free Outlook.com account and stuff like that too, but we'll call out the specific education stuff. So Microsoft Copilot, why? Main thing is it's always up to date. We have seen all these updates being released in different platforms of AI, whether it's different brands, OpenAI, etc. Microsoft Copilot is always going to have one of the most up-to-date versions. It's transparent, and I love, because I've used some of the other AI tools, the Microsoft Copilot is citing the sources. So you get a list of sources as you're going through it, which is super helpful, and it searches the web for you. So when you're using the web version, the mobile version of Microsoft Copilot, or the Windows version, where it just pops up on your Windows machine, it's going to cite the sources and show you where it's coming from, whether it's a file you have on your computer or a website. So it's going out and getting real-time, updated information from the web, which is super helpful. And then it does have that Microsoft commercial data protection. And what that means is it's not training the AI on the data you're putting into it. So whatever prompts you're putting in there, Microsoft's not saving those. They're not training their AI tool on those, which is super helpful for education because we may be asking some sensitive questions. We may be asking about certain things that we really don't need the system to be saving. And so that's a safeguard that's in place, and that's a promise for education, which is super helpful. Microsoft, we usually say, there's different companies make their money in different ways. Microsoft doesn't make its money based on your data. Another big company does. So that's something that's super important. Microsoft makes its money on devices and licensing and stuff like that. So it's something to know. So here's the main places I'm going to focus on, that everything, examples I give and whatnot, you can do pretty much in all of these places. So copilot.microsoft.com, that's where I mostly personally use Copilot, outside of like Word and OneNote example I gave before. You can also access it just on your Windows machine. So you probably in recent updates over last year have a new little Copilot symbol that's in your taskbar. Mine's in the very bottom right beside the clock in my taskbar. There's a little Copilot icon down. I can click on that and it pops up this sidebar that you see in this window. You can also use it in Microsoft Edge. This is the second most place that I use Copilot. Is I'm on a website and I want to know something more about that website. I want it to summarize for me, something like that. And then more and more I'm starting to use it on mobile. One of my favorite features, I don't have time to model this today, but one of my favorite features I'd encourage you to check out is if you have the Copilot app on your device, you can actually snap a picture or upload a picture and ask it to tell you more about that picture, to identify some things in that picture. Especially for me moving to a new location, I've used that a few times with plants and animals and different areas we're exploring, which has been super helpful. Okay, cool. So what are you getting out of using Copilot? One of the things these next couple of slides I got from one of the Microsoft engineers. He presented at ISTE, the big education conference here in the US, the last week of June. And I thought this was really helpful. And so I'm using some of these slides. So the use of Copilot, when they surveyed teachers this last year that were using it, these are the things they got from using Copilot. They said it improved their quality of their content because it helped to increase their creativity and enabled them to kind of do things that they normally would take a lot of time. It reduced those mundane tasks and helped them feel better about what they were doing. They were able to complete those tasks faster and then move on to higher level activities and increase their output. And I'm seeing this. I have a goal to write more. I am not a writer. And so Copilot's helping me with that brainstorming part to get me past the blank page, right? The scary blank page. Our students always get stuck on that too. It's like, all right, how do I brainstorm to get my outline, to get my main points? So then I can get into the meat of it and get into the higher level activities. They saw with the survey that drafting lesson plans on a new topic was that much faster. Analyzing activities were that much faster. Creating new activities, summarizing meetings that they missed, writing a first draft, which is that example I gave, and searching for information, all were sped up and was faster because of the work they were able to do, that they kind of skipped over those mundane pieces, which is super helpful, right? So when you look at what you're doing here and able to kind of move through quicker, I want to encourage you to, and this slide maybe has been seen before, if any of you have participated in any Copilot trainings or webinars or anything before, you may have seen this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again. Copilot is great to help you create an outline, list ideas for a lesson, summarize key events, design a lesson that you're teaching, and it does a really good job of putting those together and helping you get started. So those are really important things. And then this slide I think is super important. So if you've not seen these ideas of what a prompt may look like, I encourage you to either take a snapshot of this or write it down. So a prompt can include a persona, should include, let me rephrase that, a persona. Who do you want the AI to be acting like, right? Because the AI is just a tool. It's waiting for you to give it instructions. So who do you want to be? Right? You say like you're a third grade teacher. you're an instructional designer, you're an administrator, you're a concerned parent, right? Like what persona and what outcome do you want to get from this? And that's what you're telling it. The objective, what do you want it to do? Create an outline, create a table, summarize this document, right? What do you want it to do? Audience, who's this for? Write it as you're talking to a third grade class. Write it as you're trying to convince an administrator. Write it or give me a table based on a whatever, right? Who do you want it for? So that's an important piece. And then you can put limitations, but always directions. The more specific you can be, I've heard my colleague Becky says this a lot, the more time she takes on writing a good prompt, the better her outcome and faster she can get through her outcomes. Because something I struggled with, especially when I first started using it, is I would write my prompt, but then it wouldn't quite give me what I wanted. So I'd iterate and ask it to redefine this or redo this. And then I was stuck in more time iterating. Whereas if I had spent more time on my original prompt, the rest of it would have went a lot faster and smoother. So I'd encourage you to take your time on this part, writing the prompt, really specifying what you want, then your outcomes are going to be that much smoother. And I'll give you some examples. So this first example is around the idea of you as an educator or educators you work with writing a lesson. This can be done in a couple of ways. This example is what I mentioned before, is if you have the licensing, and I know not everybody does, but if you have the licensing on Microsoft 365 Copilot, so that means Copilot is built into Word, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, right? This is where you can get some of those pieces. So this is what it could look like. It could look like you creating a lesson. And so the prompt you give is create a lesson for a history course, focus on the French Revolution, the learning style, the class is this long, add in an icebreaker, right? You can give it those pieces. You can have it discussed with peers. So let's say you're doing a Teams call with a group. I know in the school I taught in, I was a middle school history teacher. I would have a monthly meeting with all the middle school history teachers from the 36 campuses I worked with. I was in Phoenix, Arizona. And so we would get together. If we were doing it nowadays, we'd probably do it over Teams. And so I could get a summary of all of those things, and I can ask Copilot to do that for me. Maybe we used a whiteboard to brainstorm. So Microsoft Whiteboard has Copilot now where you can ask it to summarize all the things that were sketched and put together in a brainstorm there. Then I can have that email using that document. That's a key part of the paid for version of Microsoft 365 Copilot, is it can use a document in your OneDrive to create other things, to put together an email, summarize in a PowerPoint, and then you can use that to present. So that's pretty cool. Now, I know not everybody has access to that, but I think it's worth pointing out what a workflow might look like. Now, let's say that you are going to be using Copilot on web. So we can do a similar piece, and I'm going to click play here and talk over this like recorded piece. So this is just at copilot.microsoft.com. I have chosen in this, well, so this is pointing out, and Mike Tholfsen of the Microsoft team actually put this little video together and used this at ISTE as well. I'll just give him credit. So I'm using creative here. So if you use precise, you're looking for very specific information. Balanced, kind of is a little bit of both. I pretty much always use creative because it has the fastest and most up-to-date OpenAI system, which right now I think is 4.0 A or B. And then I can put in my prompt and I can ask it for that lesson. And you notice with this lesson plan, it's giving us the objectives, it's giving us activities, but it's citing its sources. And so when he hovers right there, yeah, you can see that it's citing those sources. And I can even go to any of those individual sources and look at them further. And now I can ask it to continue to go. All right, can you add some different pieces to that? Can you give me something and summarize it in a table? So now it's creating a table from that, and it added an image from that as well. So we're able to see that image, right? And I can even export that table into Excel and whether work on that, format that, continue to go further. And then I can say, hey, can you create an image of Stonehenge and add in Merlin from the Arthurian legacy, right? So this is going to add in these fun pictures. And so these are completely AI generated, right? It's not a real picture. It's AI generated. And I can save that to my presentation to make it more interesting, right? So all of these things is Copilot helping us get started. And then, of course, I click new topic and it starts all over and it doesn't keep any of that information, for good or bad. It doesn't keep any of that information stored. I can do a similar thing on mobile just to show how that works. So on mobile, I can launch the Copilot app. Now there's a little circle, 3 circles up here. You can choose if you want balanced or creative. And then I can ask it for creating a lesson plan. So I could do some of the same stuff on mobile, which is super helpful, including generating an image. So that's awesome. So you could put those things together and get that to come through. So mobile is working very similarly, right? So here's another one. Our friend Joe over at the Microsoft team, he was a former special ed teacher, put together this idea. And I know this is kind of small, so I'm just going to kind of summarize for you what this is talking about. So this was a book report, and that a student asked for their book report if they could read a certain book. The teacher hadn't heard of the book. So in their prompt, they said, can you tell me about this book? What is it? And what should I be looking for if I don't know if a book is appropriate? And then they said, okay, these are the things I should be looking for if it's appropriate or not. Now, based on this book title, which I even showed a picture of it, can you tell me if any of this is not appropriate? And then the third is, hey, can you help me draft an email based on the things that I'm not too sure about in points 1 and 4 should be, that parents should know about. And then I can ask if they want to approve the student to read it for their book, right? So kind of, again, this kind of workflow of how I can be using Copilot to support what I'm doing in the classroom. Same thing, this is a special education prompts. This is the one I was mentioning that Joe helped put together, which I'm working with the students. They really like, these couple of things. They really struggle with these things. What are some ways that I can support this student? Okay, great. Now, continue to give me some activities I can do to help the student stay focused and continue to do that. Now you notice I didn't use the student's name. I didn't mean to cop there, sorry. I didn't use the student's name. I'm not giving away specific PII, right? Personally identifiable information. Even though it's a closed, safe environment, there's no reason to be putting that stuff in here. Just want to call that out. Any AI, but especially those that are not data protected. If you're using a different than Copilot for Education. And so that's what these kind of expand on. And then leveling text. This is a really easy one to do. This is probably one of the ones I've used the most when I'm working with classes, is I can either copy and paste in a text and ask it to give it to me in blank, 3rd grade reading level, 4th grade reading level, Lexile level of, right? You can give it those. Or in the Edge sidebar, you can say, change or give me this text, summarize this text, give it to me in a 3rd grade student's understanding, right? So then it'll do the same thing in the sidebar. So you can either copy and paste in something, or you can go to an article on a page and ask it to level that text for you. So that's another way you could be using that in your class right away. Yeah, this is another one where I thought this one was really funny. This is another Joe example. He did a great job coming up with some of these. So explain to me the Qualcomm Snapdragon X, which is a computer processor, as if I really like, because in a way that I understand because I like trains. And so it says the locomotive is like the CPU. A carriage is like the core. The fuel efficiency is like power, right? And then this one is, I understand dinosaurs. It says, okay, well, the Snapdragon X is like the T-Rex because it's the biggest and most powerful. The X Plus is like the Stegosaurus because it's still big, but it's not as, right? Hilarious. I love the examples. But you see, you can give Copilot these prompts to best help you and your students understand things. And so I could totally see, I come from a middle school teacher. I could totally see using this dinosaur one in lots of things to explain to students different concepts. They would love that, but they would remember it, right? Like, oh my gosh, okay, that was like the T-Rex, right? And so they could remember that and be able to relate, which I think is super awesome and really funny. Okay, so this is another one, executive function. So helping the students kind of break down tasks. If you're not familiar with the term executive function, it has to do with how we do things in a logical and order. And a lot of students come up short on this because they're not used to or they haven't been taught how to break things down. And especially our students that maybe are struggling with learning disabilities. Executive function is one of the best things we can teach them. And so this is really helping them break down. And so they have this chart, this rubric. And so based on this rubric, I can give it what the topic is, and then it'll break down steps of how to write that in a logical sequence based on the rubric. And so we can really break that down and then just give to students how they can break it down and support them, right? So I'm not giving them the answer. I'm not telling Copilot to write the paper. I'm asking Copilot how to support the students in logically breaking down their writing assignment. And I think that's a key difference when we hear about some of the plagiarism fears and a lot of the fears around AI replacing things or taking away from students being able to learn. I think instead we need to be thinking about how AI could support building those structures to support students in their learning. How do we use AI, Copilot here, to be able to break down difficult tasks? How do we use Copilot to brainstorm and to come up with new ways of learning? So I love Stefan dropped in the chat, learn prompting guide. So thanks for dropping in that resource. If any of you have done something that like I've been talking about here, or maybe you use Copilot in a really creative way, love for you to share that in the chat for your colleagues that are on this call. We're all educators here. Love to have you share as I'm kind of transitioning through our last couple of minutes here. Please share in the chat maybe something you've done or seen or heard of that has been really helpful for you and the use of Copilot or just AI in general. I would be amiss to talk about Copilot and not say where you can learn more. So on Microsoft Learn, so if you're not familiar with Learn, it's just learn.microsoft.com. There's a fantastic course on there. And our team at I2E wrote this course, and it's a great course around understanding and teaching with Microsoft Copilot. And so you can see the link right on the screen. If you're with me live, you can actually click on that link and it will launch in your browser. So you can just go to aka.ms/Copilot for educators. You can also just go to learn.microsoft.com and you can find all of the Copilot courses that are available on there because there are multiple. There's series just for educators and there's series for others as well. And that's a great place where you can continue your learning past today. You can also visit us at i2e-llc.com/AI. I just dropped it in the chat. And that takes you to our AI page where we do more professional development. We get into the more details. We really walk through prompt engineering and how you can use AI in different ways in your school, in your class, and be able to do that. In our last couple of minutes, I want to mention the other places in Microsoft that there's also areas that AI is being really helpful. So we're seeing it reduce time and really speed up what an educator can do. And in Microsoft Teams, you can now use AI to create rubrics, to create assignments, and to create reading passages. So especially if you're using reading progress, if you've not seen reading progress in Microsoft Teams assignments, I highly encourage you to check that out. And you can come up with the comprehension questions around that reading passage. So that's pretty cool. I'm not going to go through the learning accelerators today, but this is another place that AI is really being a huge support in what we're doing as educators. So reading progress, math progress is just coming out. Microsoft Reflect, so it's using like basically quiz questions. They're not quiz questions. I'm blanking on the correct word to say there, but questions saying, how are you doing today? How are you feeling about the last test you took? And then giving you as an educator insights into how students are feeling, if there's students that you should be concerned about and checking in on. Progress, speaker progress and coach are amazing. This is in Microsoft Teams and in PowerPoint. The one in PowerPoint, Speaker Coach, has actually been around for a long time. Those of you may be familiar with that, where it records your video and your voice going through a presentation. And so you're able to practice your skills and have students practice their presentation skills and be able to say, like, how am I doing? Am I going too fast? Am I using a lot of filler words? Am I being able to uh, use words and language that's inclusive for everybody? So those are all things that Speaker Coach kind of helps with. And then Search Coach and Search Progress are phenomenal tools. And Education Insights takes the data from all of the things I just mentioned across the screen and gives you really useful and meaningful insights, which is great. So I know that's a little bit outside of Copilot, but I thought it was worth mentioning because I think they're phenomenal tools. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I know we're kind of coming to the end of our time here. If there's any questions you have or anything you'd like to learn more about, please drop it in the chat or raise your hand, and I can even turn off or turn on your microphone if you'd like to come off of mute. But anyways, thanks for joining us. Hopefully this gave you some ideas and some ways that you could use Microsoft Copilot and AI in general for what you're doing every day as an educator, and whether you're supporting educators or working in the classroom yourself. So thank you for being with us. Stay in contact. Hope to see you on socials and other places, and maybe see you in some future webinars as well. But have a great rest of your day, wherever you're coming from, and take care. Thanks, everybody.